Faith and Family Fellowship Podcast is a Christ-centered podcast. Established in 2019 and hosted weekly by Pastor Chris Busher. Addressing a host of topics such as the Great Commission, Christian discipleship, and often featuring interviews with special guests who are experts in their field. The views and events expressed on this podcast and all related materials belong solely to their author and not necessarily to the author's employer, organization, committee, or other group or individual. While all attempts are made to present accurate information, some information may become outdated over time. Faith and Family Fellowship Podcast makes every attempt to timely update any and all such information. Without further delay, here's another powerful episode of Faith and Family Fellowship Podcast.
Welcome back to another episode of Faith and Family Fellowship Podcast. Once again, my name is Dallas here, joining you with another amazing guest, Dr. Fiott. Is it okay if I call you Doctor?
Sure, but you can just call me Val, whichever you prefer.
Call you Val. Okay, Val Fiott, Dr. Val Fiott. So it's such a pleasure to have you here to join with our audience.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
You are a representative of a company called
OXYVA.
You are representing a company called OXYVA. OXYVA. And so we're going to talk about all of this today, improving lives by improving blood flow. And so as we get into that, but before we do, I would like to just give you some time. Tell us a little bit about who you are.
Sure. Well, I'll tell you, my career began in health and fitness coaching. And I started off long ago in the mid-1990s, working with people just towards longevity and better health. I'd come from being a pretty sick kid. I was hospitalized a lot as a young man and even into my 20s, frankly. So every time I found myself waking up in a hospital bed, all I could think was, I don't believe that this is just genetics. I don't believe that what put me here is bad luck, like most people believe. I really felt strongly that the foods I was eating, the environment, the lifestyle, even as a young kid, I was convinced that this is about the environment and about the foods going into me and the water I'm drinking and everything else. And the decisions I'm making more than anything. And so as I got older, I started pursuing more and more understanding of health science. And what I learned as I went further and further down the rabbit hole is that, although genetics play a role, it's ultimately up to us and choosing the right environment and the right decisions each day and the right belief systems. And, we make so many decisions throughout a day and they all affect our mood. They affect our physicality. They affect our longevity. They affect our mobility. And they affect every aspect of our quality of life. And so the more I thought about it as I got further into my career, the more I realized I really wanted to work with helping people who really wanted to make a difference in their lives, who didn't have the, well, you got to go sometime kind of mantra, but who really felt like, let's connect, show me what I can do. Let's learn from each other. Let me have a better life. And anyway, it got to a point where eventually I was writing so much on this. I was doing so many press releases and NBC and such. And it got to a point where I was tapped to lead a physical health department for the very elderly. Our average age at this community was 88 years old. That was the average age.
The average, wow. Wow.
Yeah, usually those communities, it's about 74, 75. So this was a phenomenally older environment. They had assisted living, memory support, everything there. And so I took that job as director of physical health, and I took it very seriously. I never really left. I was there all day into the night very often. And my job was to get people very healthy who were very immobile, had multiple strokes, heart attacks, all kinds of things. And my job was to get people moving again and healthier blood and everything. And that was a really insightful time for me. So anyway, that's a little part of my background.
Yeah, thank you for sharing all of that.
You're listening to the Faith and Family Fellowship Podcast. We'll be right back after this quick word from our sponsors.
The Jesus in My Life podcast is all about getting the good news out to the masses for the purpose of demonstrating to the world that the living God is real. This podcast contains personal stories of everyday Christians experiencing Jesus in their lives. This interview format podcast is hosted by Jack and Rob. Listen to the podcast by searching Jesus in My Life podcast on your favorite application today. Amigos is provided support and care for children in horrendous conditions, providing food, shelter, education, and water. From children's homes and schools in Uganda, water wells and churches in the refugee camps near the border of South Sudan, and 7.5 million meals to hungry children in Guatemala. Amigos is fighting to give children hope, love, and security in every way possible. Amigos is now moving proactively to meet the needs around the world of the most vulnerable. Find more information at amigosii.org. That is amigosii.org. And tell our audience, where are you located as well?
I'm in the state of Michigan.
In Michigan.
In the U.S. Yeah.
Okay. And did you grow up in Michigan your entire life?
No, but most of it. I did grow up here, and then I lived elsewhere for a while, and the state seems to find a way to pull us back in. So somehow I ended up, after living out of state a couple of times, I ended up back here.
I'm from Missouri originally. I'm hoping I don't go back, but maybe one day.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing all of that stuff. And so one more time for our audience, you represent this company, this product called OXYVA, an incredible clinically proven over the skin solution, industry leading benefits, all of that. I'm going to let you tell us more about that, but just tell our audience how you became working with this product. How did that happen?
Well, I became aware of OXYVA from some of the creators, some of the founders of OXYVA had reached out to me. We talked just a little bit about the product. It's right up my alley because it's it's one of these beautiful natural ways to radically improve health in a short amount of time. No side effects, no known side effects, and I can't personally find any physiological reason why there would be one. So extremely low risk, especially in my opinion, but also clinically, it's a very low risk kind of thing, and so kind of solution. And so when I was contacted, I got pretty excited right away because this has been such a big part of my career, is hearing about these things and getting excited and wanting to promote them and talk about them, as opposed to what I see, frankly, a lot of people in the industry do. They go, "Oh, that's a nice idea," and they tend to gloss over it, and years go by and it was never really capitalized on. So I was more than happy to become a bit of a voice and to talk more about how this product is changing so many lives.
Yeah. Can you tell us how is this product changing people's lives?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you briefly what it does, and then I'll explain less briefly how it does, if that's okay.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you. So it's a very simple application. You just take a quick shot of it. It's over the skin. It's non-invasive. And what this does is OXYVA, basically it increases your peripheral circulation. It takes your circulation out of just being in the gut, where circulation's mainly, for the most part, most of it goes on in the gut throughout the day. And so people don't often get enough circulation out to the periphery, to their fingers, their toes, and their limbs in general. And so with OXYVA, you just take a couple of quick shots, 1 or 2 quick shots. It's very, very simple and pain-free, and circulation is improved. And what's so important about this, I should mention that many people don't really need circulation to leave the gut all that much, any more than it already does. But there are many people who do need it. People with, for example, with arthritis, with fibromyalgia, rheumatoid arthritis as well. They need improved circulation to really get the kind of healing that they need. And the body doesn't really allow for that. The body doesn't really, as much as the body is self-healing to a point, it needs a little bit of help. And so basically what this does now is it gets the circulation to where you need it, when you need it, which therefore helps with the healing. Because if you have clean enough blood, if you have healthy enough blood, just getting it to the tissues that need it is going to do a whole lot more for their oxygenation and to improve your health and to reduce those painful conditions.
Mm-hmm. And can you tell us about some of the clients that have used this and maybe some of their stories that you have?
Oh, yeah, there are a lot. Well, I mentioned fibromyalgia, I believe, right?
Mm-hmm.
Fibromyalgia patients, especially. Are you personally familiar with fibromyalgia? Do you know
I've
what
heard
that
of
is?
it, but I'm not on a first basis. No. Mm-mm.
Okay. Well, it's usually considered to be a form of arthritis.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's not like osteoarthritis, where osteoarthritis is actually the breakdown of cartilage, right? It's actually where the joint integrity, the joint ability to function is no longer really there because the parts aren't fully there.
Mm-hmm.
This is very different. Like rheumatoid arthritis or fibromyalgia, they're not really quite that same way. They're painful in a different way, not because of a chipping away of the cartilage, but for more neurological reasons. And so the long story short is by getting oxygen through the blood, by getting more blood and therefore more oxygen to those areas
Mm-hmm.
that are suffering, that are painful, you're helping them to be more nourished and therefore to be less symptomatic. And that's probably the shortest way I can explain it, and the best way to
Mm-hmm.
explain it without being too verbose. And many people, and when you're asking about what kinds of patients are using it, many people with this kind of joint pain are using this. And it's beautiful because for people who have these kind of disorders, they don't really know when it's going to strike. You know what I mean? Some of them are in pain all day long, but you never really know when it's really going to get more severe. It's not always as simple as, oh, I'm going to go for a long walk, so now I know I'm going to be painful. Sometimes you go for a long walk, you feel fine during the walk. You get home, and then maybe 2 hours later, you're in a lot of pain. Other times you'll have pain as soon as you embark on the walk. Sometimes you don't at all. So what I'm getting at is that what they're doing is they're able to use OXYVA when they need it, when they start to have pain, or right before they believe they're about to have it, for those who are
Mm-hmm.
more aware of when their triggers tend to happen. So that's a big part of the people who are using OXYVA and the patients who are getting therapy. However, I'll also tell you it's working really well for a lot of patients who, like diabetics with foot ulcers, especially. People with foot ulcers really are suffering, and OXYVA is doing a whole lot of good there because that's a condition where you just need more oxygenation. You need more oxygenation to that area, to the foot. And so when they're having these ulcers and they're taking a big risk at potentially looking at amputation,
Wow.
imagine. I know the thought horrifies me. The thought of waking up each day and wondering if you're going to find out this is the day you're going to have to lose a foot soon, right? If you're going to get that news. And for a long time, there wasn't a whole lot the medical world could really do, or that anybody could really do. These people often couldn't be mobile enough to really to get more oxygenation to the muscles. You could get massage, you could do things, but oftentimes it just wasn't enough. With OXYVA, they've got a real great new opportunity now. So a lot of patients are using this in regard to foot ulcers and to risk of amputation.
Mm-hmm.
Is that if you can get the blood flow occurring in the feet or wherever area this is happening, generally it's in the foot, if you can get that happening really well, you're in a much, much better position to stave off any kind of risk of potentially having an amputated foot.
Mm-hmm. And I see here that you guys are working with 18 of 20 of the top ranked U.S. hospitals and universities throughout the U.S. That's incredible.
You bet. Yeah, that's the thing. This is far from a kind of fly by night, solution. There's so many. I don't want to say scams, but there are so many things out there that the real data on them is slim. Where okay, well, we've got one or two studies, but we don't really have a lot, and those studies are maybe on a particular type of patient. These studies are a lot broader, and they really make a lot more sense. And frankly, in my personal opinion, the product and the way the solution works is simple enough to where it doesn't really require a tremendous amount of investigation. It's fairly straightforward in what it does, and there's really no mystery as to its function. So for that reason alone, I think it's it really is just a beautiful home run, and it's doing so much good for all kinds of patients, like I've just mentioned, and many more as well.
And for our audience today, is this affordable?
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's a very affordable product, very low cost. It's something that it also does not require long-term maintenance. It's not something where there's like a subscription attached for any reason. It's such a quick and simple investment. And I think for the amount of good it can do people and that it does do people, to me, it's a no-brainer. It's definitely something that people would want, even if they're not terribly suffering at this point. Just as a preventive, I'd recommend it to anybody who has poor circulation, especially if you've got poor circulation and problems with mobility as well. The two tend to go hand in hand, but they don't always. Because if you have problems with mobility, so for example, in my career, I've worked tremendously with people who have all kinds of joint pain and pelvic problems and all kinds of things. If you have trouble moving, that means circulation is going to keep getting worse in most cases, right? Your circulation is promoted by large movements, going for big moves, big walks, hikes, moving your arms and legs in a big way. And of course, it's impeded and it's slowed when you're not moving much. In fact, I just had a coworker's mother pass away recently. And what we were saying was, she almost never moved. She didn't exercise. She really almost never got off the couch. And so people like that who are not really moving much, she had some pains as well, some joint pains and such, arthritis. If you're not going to move much, it's fair to assume circulation is just getting worse and worse and worse. So all the more reason why an investment like this is a really smart one, because you can keep your circulation healthy or even improve it, even if you're not able to necessarily, or not willing to necessarily go out and do a whole lot of movement.
Mm-hmm. Some of the other benefits I see here, it improves sleep quality, stamina, mood, cognition, all these other things. What else can you tell us about this?
Yeah, I love this part of the conversation. I think one of the most understated, and there are many, but one of the most understated concerns about preventive health or therapeutic health is that circulation is a critical part of everything we do. Okay. I've said this a lot too about the nervous system, that you really live your life through your nervous system. Everything, sensory input, output, everything is, without the nervous system being healthy, you're not really healthy. But I say the same about circulation. Circulation is everything. And so a lot of things that we think of as general aging problems. Okay, so let me put it this way. When you think of getting older, do you think of having smaller movements and smaller stride length and such as you get older?
Definitely.
Right? Sure you do. Do you think about more aches and pains as being a natural part of aging?
Hopefully not, but I'm sure it'll come.
Right. So we think of it as normal.
Yeah.
And I'll give you one more example: lack of cognition, less mental clarity, more brain fog, more getting lost, more poor memory. We think of these things as a natural, normal part of aging. And a lot of clinical text does say that. It's a natural, normal part of aging. All these problems are just going to happen. Well, I can show you, I can show you a lot of people. A lot of my studies over the years have been on the blue zones. Are you familiar with the blue zones by any chance?
I'm not. Go ahead. Please tell our audience what this is.
Yeah, let me explain, because again, there's not enough talk about this, and I'll bring all these threads together here in a moment. But the blue zones are the parts of the world where an abnormal amount of people live to be centurion. They live to be 100 years old or older. Whereas in the United States here, we don't have a very high percentage of those people. But in these blue zones, they're radically uncommon. They do phenomenally better in terms of longevity than we do. And I might add that their activities are, they stay mobile and healthy to a much longer age. I did some research on a woman who was 122. And so not here in the States at all, but 122. Now, when I first mentioned her at a couple of speaking events, all I said was her age. And I didn't really say much more. And people were kind of suggesting, so she's probably bedridden, or she's probably, in a lot of pain. Mm-hmm. No, she gardens all day. She's outside gardening and squatting up and reaching up into trees and doing all these really physical things throughout the day. I mean, for much longer than most Americans move. Mm-hmm. And in fact, she had more ankle mobility than typical 20 and 30-year-olds here in the States. She's 122 years old. So, my goodness. So what I'm getting at here is it really is about the decisions we make and about the way we live our lives. She's not sitting on the couch playing video games like a lot of kids 100 years younger than her are elsewhere in the world. She's out in nature with presumably clean air. It wasn't really part of the study, but I'm assuming so, where she lived. Presumably clean air. She's grounding, meaning her feet are barefoot and flat on the earth throughout a lot of the day. And she's mobile, and her circulation is everywhere. I guess that's the point. Her circulation is extreme because she's reaching up and crouching down and reaching up. And so anyway, she's extremely mobile. She reported almost no body aches or pains or anything, nothing outside of what you'd expect from someone 100 years younger. And so my point here is, when you really understand what aging is truly, it does not inherently, and the key word is inherent, it does not inherently involve less cognition and less mental clarity and limited memory, aches, pains, all these things that we normally consider to be normal aging here and in most of the world, frankly. When you look at these blue zones and you look at areas where they are healthier and they have a different lifestyle, those things really aren't happening. They're just not happening unless it's tied into lifestyle. So I would suggest that if someone really lived life in a really great way, like she does, that they have very little reason. By the way, she had all her marbles too. I don't think I mentioned that, but she, in terms of mental clarity, was absolutely fine. They interviewed her for, I believe, a couple of days. And she, to my understanding, didn't even stutter, just was very connected. So anyway, the point is, a lot of this comes down to healthy circulation is what I'm boiling down to. If you do the things for your body to have the right circulation, and you're eating healthy foods as well, you are nourishing the body with the nutrients from those healthy foods. And then you need healthy hydration too. You want to be drinking clean water and enough water each day. All those things go with it. But the point is that if your blood is healthy enough and you're getting the right circulation, you are healthy enough. If you're not getting good circulation, all kinds of things can shut down, because the bottom line to your life, and I mentioned central nervous system earlier as well, but it's oxygenating the tissues. You have to get the oxygen in the blood healthy and get it to all the tissues throughout the body. And when that happens, you don't see these things that are considered normal aging nearly as much. So
some practical ways, it makes total sense. Some practical ways of prevention for our audience today. Yeah.
Well, I do recommend OXYVA, obviously, but if we're talking about lifestyle prevention as well.
Yes.
Well, yeah. You're speaking my language now. First and foremost, you do need an exercise program that makes sense for you. And I qualify that because it has to make sense for you. I see a lot of people who are committed to an exercise program. The exercise program just doesn't make sense for their body. I've seen people where they've already got very sluggish posture forward. The shoulders are pulled forward, and they're doing exercises that perpetuate that and make that worse. And I always, try to break it to them and say, I love that your head and your heart are connected to exercise. You care about your health. In this case, you're choosing some exercises that are actually going to make things worse, right? So the right exercise prescription for your musculoskeletal system to strengthen the weak muscles, but the ones that are already strong enough, just try to leave them alone for the most part, because there's definitely such a thing as doing the wrong thing in exercise. And then, of course, you want the right aerobic health as well. And that also comes from a couple things. That comes from the right nutrition, eating organic, getting the right number of servings of vegetables. Vegetables are big. I see a lot of people, they think if they have a tiny little bowl of salad once every week or two, that they're in good shape. And that's unfortunately not enough. It's not going to do it. So you need to think a lot about the exercise that you're getting, why you're getting it. Is it appropriate? I'd seek out a professional for that. Same with nutrition. I can show you thousands of people who say, "Oh, I'm eating right." Well, if you really put a microscope on what they're eating and how much they're eating, you find out it's actually pretty devastating. And I mentioned hydration earlier. Hydration gets forgotten a lot because it's so kind of easy and simple, but hydration is critical. You will, quote unquote, age much more quickly. You'll have all the problems that we just spoke about a moment ago. You'll have all of those if you don't have the right hydration. Hydration, when it's poor, it'll shut down the brain, it'll shut down the heart. I mean, it is incredible how important hydration is, because every single biological process that we have, that we're running in our systems throughout the day, relies on having the right amount of the right amount of hydration, the right amount of total body water. And when your body doesn't have enough, Well, it starts reprioritizing. So it starts saying, okay, I've got to digest the food right now. So that means I have to shut off some other process. And you don't want that. You don't want your body, you don't want a body that has to compromise.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
I need a glass of water real quick.
There you go. Yeah. So I'll take one too, as long as we're talking about it.
Yeah, that's a good reminder.
Right.
A good water play there.
I'll tell you briefly while we're on it about hydration. When I was working in the community that I mentioned earlier with very old people, a very old population, very immobile. Some of them, they were so immobile, it was very sad. It would literally take them to go from their apartment just down to dinner each night. It would literally take them about an hour. And this wasn't a physically huge community, but they had to plan it like a very long, well, imagine if you're going to go for a walk for an hour, you have to, especially if you have mobility issues, right? So anyway, one of the key things that really turned them around was for many of the residents there, I found out how little water they were drinking. And I'd find out in a whole day they were eating, I'm sorry, not eating, but drinking sometimes 8 to 10 ounces when their bodies needed many, many times more than that. And so for many of them, that alone, there's that one factor. They would come back and report to me after a week and say, you know what, I feel better. And I feel more energetic and I feel more alive. And I thought, oh my gosh, think of all the months or years that they went with poor hydration. And if only they had known that would have helped them, right? So anyway, so we talked exercise, talked nutrition, talked hydration. Stress is a big one too. Stress will pull minerals right out of your body. Stress will it's another one where the body starts having to make compromises. Magnesium is a big one that gets pulled out from tremendous stress. It'll pull magnesium right out of your bones. And so now the bones are less healthy. You have less magnesium, therefore the muscles are also less healthy. All just from stressing yourself
It's all
out.
connected, man.
Yeah, that's the thing. The way God made us, everything's connected. And that's why I'll tell you honestly, I take a little bit of issue with the allopathic method where we don't think of the body as a series of units working together. We tend to just think about, okay, we need a specialist for this, a specialist for that, a specialist for this, where really it's not really always the best way to look at it, because truly the way we're made, everything all works together in conjunction. And again, the body's always prioritizing and trying to figure out what should get more attention, what should get more circulation and blood flow.
Yeah. And one more question for you. How would OXYVA compare to the competitors out there? Or are there any competitors out there?
I'll be honest, to my knowledge, there's nothing that really does what OXYVA does. There are other methods of trying to improve circulation, but none that work functionally like this one does. And none that I know of anyway, and then maybe there is something, but none that I know of that are this simple and non-invasive. And again, like I mentioned earlier, there's no real risk that we're aware of. So given all those benefits, I mean, I'd have to say I don't really know of any competitor. I will tell you that there are other methods of trying to improve circulation, and some are great, like massage is great, for example. But I don't really see massage necessarily getting these kind of improvements, right? Mm-hmm. And also, I mean, massage is a lot tougher. Good luck finding a cheap massage therapist who can be right there when you need them, whereas OXYVA's right there ready to go. So I can't really think of a direct competitor at all.
And how does our audience get connected with this product? Do they visit the website, order it from there? How does this work?
Yes, it's that simple. They can just go to doxyva.com, DOXYVA.com. They can just go there and they can learn a whole lot more. It's one of those websites too, where I think there's a great effort made to really make it clear and not confusing. There's videos, there's really simple explanatory information there. So just spend a moment on the website. You can quickly place an order and you can learn more about it quickly and easily. But it's a simple product, and I really think of it as a no-brainer.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing all of these things. You are truly passionate about this product and about this field of prevention and health. So thank you so much for everything that you said.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure being here. Have a great day and God bless.
You too. If I can ask one more final question, what would be one overall thought you would leave us with today?
Oh boy, the one I always leave every audience with. You're absolutely in charge of your health. Your health outcomes are not written in stone. And that message is out there very much that they are written in stone, that genetics play a tremendous role and that you're lucky or unlucky. Well, that is not my finding after almost 30 years of deep data digging constantly on health outcomes and lifestyle and what kind of decisions we're making and what they lead to. So long story short, you have tremendously more control over how you end up, especially as an older person. You have much, much, much more control than you realize. And I really, I mentioned earlier, I was hospitalized a lot as a kid and as a young adult. I am very glad that I had the wake-up calls that I did. And so many times I'd wake up in a hospital and tell myself, what do I need to do? What do I need to do differently in my life to avoid this? How did I have chronic COPD as a young kid? And how did I end up with an ascites buildup in my gut in my mid-20s? And what was I eating? What was I doing that led to this? So I hope everyone can have a wake-up call like I've had and like a lot of my clients have had, and really realize that you want to make the right decisions each day. You want to seek out the right professional. You want to seek out the right tools like OXYVA. And you really do want to take charge for your health. Don't just leave it to the medical world only, because they only see you a few times a year in most cases. Yeah. You are dealing with you all day long, and every decision you make is going to push your health outcomes one way or the other. Make sure you're pushing them the right way.
Mm-hmm. Well, thanks again for all the things that you shared. Please, one more time, check out the website, doxyva.com, DOXYVA.com. And the link is also below in the description. See you on the next one.
You've just listened to the Faith and Family Fellowship Podcast with your host, Pastor Chris Busher. Faith and Family Fellowship Podcast was recorded live in studio with final editing made before uploading. Subscribe today to Faith and Family Fellowship Podcast on iTunes or Google Play. For more fantastic daily content, visit Pastor Chris Busher online via Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. Don't miss the next episode on Faith and Family Fellowship Podcast.